The Jewish Game of Conquest, Part 2. Yesterday in the yeshiva over here, they had the yeshiva of Yeshivas Hebron was one of the guest speakers they had over here yesterday. So we're going to be talking about the city of Hebron today, the history of the city of Hebron. So it's,
what was his name?
His name was David Cohen. They had a bunch of guest speakers in the afternoon, and he was one of the people. So you know why it's called Yeshivas Hebron? So actually, the yeshiva is not located in Hebron. It's actually located in Jerusalem, in Yerushalayim, in the Givat Mordechai neighborhood. But originally, the Alter of Slobodka started a branch of his yeshiva in the city of Hebron, and in 1929, the Arabs massacred the city of Hebron, and most of the Jews actually left the city and moved elsewhere. And so the yeshiva moved from Hebron to Yerushalayim in 1929 after that massacre. But it's still called the Hebron Yeshiva, even though it's in Yerushalayim. Just a tidbit of history.
Mir.
Yeah, Mir is called Mir. Okay, so the name Hebron, we don't know exactly what it means or where it comes from, but the name Hebron is probably related to the word chaver, which is a friend, or chibur, which means to attach. Not sure exactly what the significance of the name would be, but it's that's the name of the city. It's a very old city. In fact, Josephus, who was writing in the 1st century of the Common Era, so Josephus writes that in his time, Hebron was already 2,300 years old. So that even predates Avram Avinu. So Hebron was, it's a city from earlier than the times of Avram Avinu, etc. There's actually a Gemara that says that the city of Hebron was built by the son of Noach. Noach had 3 sons, Shem, Cham, and Yafes, like the one in this week's parsha. And his son Cham, who was probably, according to some authority, was the oldest son. So nobody says he's the oldest son. Either Shem was the oldest son or Yafes was the oldest son. Cham wasn't the oldest son, but Cham, the son of Noach, according to the Gemara, was the one who actually built the city of Hebron. That's the assumption that the Gemara works with. There's another source, a Taimani medrash, a medrash that came from Yemen, in Parsha Shlach. It's called Ma'ara Fela. So he says that actually Adam Rishon was the one who founded the city of Hebron. So maybe you could say that maybe Adam Rishon founded it, and then maybe after the flood, Cham refounded the same city, something like that. But so it's a very ancient city. For those who don't have a syllabus from yesterday, I still have some left. You see on the map on our syllabus, you can see where Hebron is located. We only have one more. We'll give it to you after. You have Jerusalem here in the middle. Let's say in the middle of the Holy Land, towards the middle of the territory of Yehuda, and then you have Hebron, which is south of where Yerushalayim is located. So that's where Hebron is. It's south of Yerushalayim in the tribal territory of Yehuda. Before we get to the conquering of the city of Hebron, so Hebron comes up a few times beforehand, earlier in the Torah, when we talk about the Avos. People call Hebron Ir HaAvos, the city of the patriarchs, the city of our forefathers. So the city is first mentioned in the book of Genesis, in chapter 13, verse 18. If we're familiar a little bit with the life of Abraham, so God commanded Abraham to leave his Mesopotamian homeland and travel to the land of Canaan. And Abraham got there, and he encountered a famine in the land of Canaan. This is next week's parsha. And what happens is, because of this famine, he goes to Egypt. And according to rabbinic tradition, he's in Egypt for a few months, and then he returns back to the Holy Land. And it says over there, in chapter 13, verse 18, it says, when Avram Avinu returned back to the Holy Land, it says, Vayel Avram Vayavoy Vayeshev Be'elanei Mamre Asher B'Chevron. Avram moved his tent, and he dwelled in the plains of Mamre, which is in Hebron. Mamre is the name of one of Avram Avinu's friends, one of his colleagues. So he had this property in Hebron called Elonei Mamre, and that's where Avram Avinu lived. Vayiven Sham Mizbeach Hashem, and Avram Avinu built there an altar to Hashem. And all in all, it ends up that Avram Avinu is going to live in this place in Hebron for about 25 years. He came to Eretz Yisrael when he was 75, and he's going to leave, let's say, the year before Yitzchak was born, when he moves to Beersheba. So Avram Avinu lived in this land for in the city of Hebron for 25 years. And later on we find in the beginning of Parshas Chayei Sarah in Genesis 23 that Sarah, Avram Avinu's wife Sarah, when she died at the age of 127, so she died in the city of Kiryat Arba, which is Hebron. This is chapter 23, verse 2. Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, which is Hebron. I'll have to explain, maybe at the end of this year we'll explain why is the name Kiryat Arba applied to Hebron. Hebron is another name. Besides the name Hebron, it's also called Kiryat Arba. What's the name Kiryat Arba? What's the meaning of that name? We'll explain that at the end of the year. But Sarah dies over there, and Avram Avinu wants to bury her. And there's this whole story where he goes to a man named Ephron Ephron the Hittite, and he purchases a piece of land from him, and he actually purchases a cave of Machpelah, Maras HaMachpelah. He purchased that from Ephron Hittite, and that's where he ends up burying his wife Sarah. We find later on that at the end of Parshas Chayei Sarah, that Avram Avinu himself is also buried there. This is in chapter 25, verse 9. It says that Yitzchak and Yishmael, Avram Avinu's sons, buried him in the cave of Machpelah, which was originally in the field that belonged to Ephron, by the place of Mamre, which is in Hebron. So we see that Avram Avinu was also buried in Hebron, and we find also that Yitzchak Avinu was buried in Hebron. And it doesn't say explicitly in the Chumash that Rivka was buried there, but tradition tells us that Rivka was buried there in Hebron as well. Rivka is Yitzchak's wife. Yaakov Avinu was also buried in Hebron at the end of his life. So Yaakov Avinu makes Yosef promise that he's going to bury him in the same place where his forefathers were buried, in Maras HaMachpelah, in the cave of the Machpelah. What does Machpelah mean? Machpelah means doubled. There's different explanations. What does it mean doubled? Maybe there was a cave inside a cave. Actually, it says either a cave inside a cave, or it means that they were there as couples, or it means that they had to fold over Adam Rishon because he was so tall that he couldn't be buried normally, so they had to fold him over. So he was like doubled. There's different explanations what exactly it means Machpelah. So Yaakov Avinu makes Yosef promise that he's going to bury him in the cave of Machpelah, and indeed, when Yaakov Avinu dies, so he's buried there in the cave of Machpelah. There's actually an interesting story that it's not brought in the Tanakh itself, but it's brought in the Midrashim, that when they were going to bury Yaakov Avinu, so his brother, his arch rival Esav, comes and says that no, really, I belong to be buried. I deserve to be buried there. That spot, that burial place belongs to me. One of the arguments was that Yaakov Avinu had used up whatever plot belonged to his family by burying his wife Leah there previously. So Esav says, no, you should really bury me here. So Yaakov Avinu said, well, when you sold me the birthright, so that means that you sold me your right to a plot in that cave. So Esav said, oh, who said that I sold it to you? Were you making things up? So Yaakov Avinu said, okay, well, let's bring out the deed. I'll show you. I'll have a piece of paper. I have a document. I'll show you. And so it says in the Medrash, he didn't have it with him, right? So it says in the Medrash.
Yaakov was dead.
Not Yaakov, I'm sorry. They brought it to Yaakov Avinu's sons, to his children. And they said, they said to him, we'll show you the deed. So fine, show. So they sent their brother Naphtali, who was able to run very quickly. They sent him back to Egypt, where Yaakov Avinu's family was living at that time. Sent him to Egypt, and in the meantime, one of the Yaakov Avinu's sons, his name was Dan. So he had a son named Chushim, and Chushim, he was deaf. He couldn't hear. So he saw this whole commotion that was causing a delay in the burial of Yaakov Avinu. So he wondered, what's happening here? What's happening here? So he didn't realize what was happening. Finally, someone explained to him that this guy Esav came and he is holding up the whole procession. So the guy says, who's this Esav guy? He takes his sword, chops off Esav's head, and he gets rid of the problem. And so the Medrash says that Esav's head rolled into Yaakov Avinu's coffin and it ended up being buried with his brother Yaakov Avinu. So over here I have a nice list of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and we have Yaakov plus Esav's head is buried there. So you have Avram with his wife is buried in Maras HaMachpelah, Yitzchak with his wife Rivka, Yaakov with the head of Esav and his wife Leah are buried in Maras HaMachpelah in the city of Hebron. We have a tradition also that tells us that Adam Rishon was also buried in Hebron. It doesn't say it explicitly anywhere in Tanakh, but we have a tradition that Adam Rishon was also buried there. And the Pirkei Eliezer actually says that Avram Avinu found out that Adam Rishon was buried there, and that's why he wanted to buy that specific plot of land from Ephron Achiti. And so that's why he wanted to be buried himself there. So we have these 4 couples that were buried there. Adam and Chava, Avram and Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka, Yaakov plus Esav's head, and Leah. Those are the people that were buried in the city of Hebron. Fine. Now then the city of Hebron comes up again in the book of Bamidbar. In the Sefer Bamidbar, in Parsha Shlach, so Moshe Rabbeinu sends spies when the Jews are in the desert. Moshe Rabbeinu sends 12 spies, we mentioned this yesterday, to check out the Holy Land, to spy on it and see what's there, the land of Canaan. And as we said yesterday, 10 of the spies came back with a bad report, and 2 of the spies came back with a good report. Right? Those the 2 good spies were Yeshua and Kalev. Yeshua, we said, was Moshe Rabbeinu's successor, and Kalev is also one of the important people in the times of the judges, in the times of Yeshua, and in the times of the judges. And the other 10 gave a bad report. So it says in Numbers, chapter 14. It says, Vayalu v'negev, they came up through the south.
Which pasuk?
Oh, chapter 13, pasuk 22.
14?
Yeah, 13, sorry, 13, 22. 13, 22. So it says that these spies came up through the south. They came to the Holy Land through the south, because nobody would be expecting them to come from the south if the Jews are camped to the east of the Holy Land, on the east side of the Jordan. So if you come up from the south, it's unexpected. So they came from the south. Vayavoy ad Hebron, and they came to Hebron, or they reached Hebron. V'sham Achiman Sheshai v'Salmai, and there were Achiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, Yelidei Ha'anak, the sons of the giant. V'Hebron Sheva Shaniv Nivnasa Lifnei Tzayin Mitzrayim, and Hebron was built 7 years before Tzayin Mitzrayim. There's a lot of interesting things in this verse that we just read over here. It says the spies went up from the south, Vaya'alu v'negev, they went up from the south, Vayavoy ad Hebron, Vayavoy, and he went to Hebron, singular. One person went to Hebron. So what does that mean that one person went to Hebron? So Rashi brings a tradition from the Gemara in Saita, tells us that only one person went to Hebron. That was Kalev. Of the 2 good spies, it was Yeshua and Kalev. So Kalev specifically made a point of going to the city of Hebron. Gemara says why? Because he knew that the Avos were buried there. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov and Adam Rishon were buried there, and he wanted to make a point of going to Hebron and praying at the tomb of the forefathers in order to ask Hashem to grant him the wherewithal to withstand the test that he's going to be put in. He's going to be in a situation where he might be tempted to give a bad report of the land, and so he wanted to ask Hashem to give him the ability to be able to withstand that test. Yeshua had a special siyata d'shmaya, he had special divine assistance from the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu renamed him from Hosea to Yehoshua, so his name had Hashem's name in it, but Kalev needed an extra special divine assistance, so he wanted to pray specifically at the tomb of the forefathers. This is the one source, it happens to be in traditional rabbinic literature, that talks about the concept of praying at people's graves. You know, this is something like nowadays it's become like a big thing. You want to go to his cave, or you want to go to his grave and pray over here and pray over there. Like this is the source for that whole concept. In some ways, it's somewhat of a dangerous concept, and people have to keep in mind exactly what are they doing when they go to a grave and pray there. Because you have to keep in mind that you're not praying to the person that's buried there, because that's considered avodah zarah. You only pray to Hashem. What you do is you go over there and you want to use, let's say, the schus of that person. You ask Hashem that in the merit of that person, Hashem should grant you whatever it is that you're praying for. But you're not praying to the person, you're praying to Hashem using the merits of that person. That's a... Why should their merits apply to me? Because so you're right. Why should their merits apply to you? Because you identify with this person. I'm here at his grave. I'm making a point of coming to his grave, and I want to show that I want to associate myself with him. I'm a continuation of whoever's grave it is that you're going to. That's where it is. Is there any special magical thing that they have at the place of the grave that makes it that your prayers are going to be answered over here? No, it doesn't. We don't believe in that type. That's a paganistic idea. We believe in Hashem as the ultimate powers, and a person gets what he deserves. There's no easy way out that you go to a magical place and the prayers are automatically answered. Anyways, that's just me ranting about one of the things that I rant about.
I heard the rant.
I heard. So they go to Hebron, and what's there? What did the verse say? V'sham, and there are Achiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, Yelidei Ha'anak. Achiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, these are three names, who are the sons of the giant. So, let's talk about the giants. Not the New York Giants, not the San Francisco Giants. We're going to talk about these giants over here. Achiman, Sheshai, and Talmai. These are giant people that the spies that Moshe Rabbeinu sent encountered when they came to the city of Hebron. When the spies gave back their bad report, so they said one of the points that they said was, we went to the land of Canaan, and in verse 33 over there it says, "V'shamar inu." There we saw Nephilim, b'nei Anak, b'nei Nephilim. We saw the Nephilim, who were sons of great giants amongst the Nephilim, and we were like grasshoppers, and we were in our eyes like grasshoppers, and so we were in their eyes. We felt like grasshoppers when we were walking there, and there were these huge giants that were ruling the place. And this was sort of try to dissuade the Jewish people from wanting to go into the land of Canaan. Oh, there's these giants there, right? So they counted these giants, Achiman, Sheshai, and Talmai. There's a medrash that says that how was it that the spies were able to survive their encounter with these giants. It's not a medrash, it's actually a Zohar. The Zohar says because they had the stick of Moshe Rabbeinu with them, and the stick of Moshe Rabbeinu allowed them to be saved from these giants.
Obviously, the problem is it says only Caleb went to Hebron, so the other ones
No.
did not see the giants.
Well, it could be that they all went to Hebron, but that when the Torah tells us Vayovai in singular form, it's coming to hint to us a specific thing about him going to Hebron. But it seems like all of them went there. That's the yeah. So there's some interesting midrashim about the names of these giants of Achiman, Sheshai, and Talmai. The Gemara in Mesechus Yoma says Achiman. Why is he called Achiman? Because he's miyuman sheba'achim. He's the right, like the word yamin means the right. So you have like right and left. So in sort of biblical expression, so the right is the powerful side and the left is the weak side. Right? Even if you're a lefty, so the way you say it is that this hand, which is my left, is that's called my right hand. That's my powerful hand. And the left hand and my right hand is the weaker hand. So it's called the left hand, the small. So the miyuman sheba'achim, Achiman is called miyuman sheba'achim, the right of the brothers, because he was the most powerful of these three giant brothers. Achiman. There's another medrash that says that why is his name Achiman? Because he used to say, Achi man yavoy alai. My brothers, or Achai, my brothers, man yavoy alai. Who's going to come up against me? Man in Aramaic means who. Who's going to come up against me? Nobody. No one can fight me. Right? That's Achiman. Sheshai, why is he called Sheshai? The Medrash says because he's bari kashayish. He was as healthy as marble. He was as strong as marble. That's how difficult and how strong he was. There's another actually a Yemenite Medrash that's brought in it's actually quoted in a few different Yemenite Midrashim, Temani Midrashim, Ma'ara Fela and Medrash Abiur, Medrash Chayfetz, Medrash Hagadol, different ones. They all say that why is he called Sheshai? Because he had 6 fingers. Like the word Sheshai is related to the word Shesh, which is 6. He had 6 fingers on his hands and on his feet. So he was like a sort of superhuman type of being. He wasn't like a regular person. He was Sheshai. Talmai, there's different midrashim. Why is he called Talmai? So these are the giants that they encountered. Fine. So the next time that the city of Hebron appears, is going to be in the book of Joshua, Sefer Yeshua, when the Jewish people are coming to conquer the. I mean, it comes up. The king of Hebron is mentioned a few times earlier in the book of Joshua as one of the enemies of the Jewish people when they were conquering the land. But in chapter 14 in Sefer Yeshua, oh, sorry, what?
Sorry if you said this before I got here, but I thought there was some mention of Hebron in relation to the Garden of Eden. Did I make that up? Like maybe it was like near Hebron or something?
Not that I know of.
Maybe the river talks about where the rivers ran to, so maybe one of the rivers ran to Hebron.
It didn't mention anything about Hebron over there.
Maybe I'm confusing it with something else. Okay.
Not sure.
Sorry.
So in the book of Yeshua, in Joshua, in chapter 14, so it says over there that Kalev, the same character who went to pray in Hebron, he was one of the original good spies in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. So he asks Yeshua, or he asks that they should give him the city of Hebron, and he goes out and he fights and he defeats these giants. So this is brought in Yeshua in chapter 14, and it's also quoted in the beginning of the book of Judges after Yeshua died. So there was the judges were the leaders of until the period of the kings came about. So in the beginning of the book of Judges, and really in the first chapter in Judges, it also talks about the fact that the tribe of Yehuda conquered Hebron, and it was given to. It doesn't say over there that it was given. It was given. It doesn't say over there that it was given to Kalev, but it was given. It was given over to Kalev, and he's the one who defeated these giants. And he got the city. It was a special thing in what's it called in Yeshua. It says that in Yeshua in Perek Tezvav, Pasuk Yud Gimel, it says that Hashem gave a special prophecy to Yeshua that said that he should give the city of Hebron to Kalev. That was his reward for being a good spy and for not succumbing to the temptation to give bad report about the Holy Land. And I guess also probably related to the fact that he went to pray at the tomb of the forefathers. It says, "Ukalev ben Yifune nosan chelik b'seich ben Yehuda el pi Hashem liyeshua es Kiryat Arba avihu anak hi Hebron." Right? Fine. It's an interesting thing because the fact that the city of Hebron was given to Kalev, who's from the tribe of Yehuda, it was given over to him. So it's brought in Sefer Yeshua and it's brought in Sefer Shoftim. So it's somewhat of a controversy amongst the commentators. When did this actually happen? Did it happen in the lifetime of Yeshua? That's why it's written in Yeshua, and it's cited as well in Judges because they're just giving a summary of what happened in the lifetime of Yeshua. Or did it actually happen in the time of Judges, and it's mentioned in Yeshua in order to give you a bigger picture of what happened to all the different cities that the tribe of Yehuda conquered. It's like, when did it happen? In the time of Yeshua or in the time of the Judges? The Ralbag said it happened in the time of the Judges, and the Radak says it happened in the time of Yeshua. So it's a little bit of a machloikas or discrepancy amongst the commentators exactly when it happened. Later on, after the time of the kings, so that's the conquering of the city of Hebron, and it went to Kalev ben Yefune, part of the tribe of Yehuda. Later on, the next place that the city of Hebron comes up really is by David HaMelech, where David HaMelech originally wasn't able to get the support of all the Jewish people. He was originally just the king over Yehuda, and so he was the king over there in the city of Hebron. Hebron was his capital city for the first 7 years or so of his reign. He was 7 years and 4 months he reigned from the city of Hebron, and then afterwards he was in Yerushalayim. So it's like David HaMelech was originally in Hebron, and then he was in Yerushalayim. So even though Hebron wasn't necessarily the capital city, but it was still an important city even in the period of the kings. And then also in the time of David HaMelech, when his son Avshalom made a rebellion and declared himself to be the king, so the place that he declared himself to be king was Hebron. He went to Hebron and he called himself king from over there, and that's where he wanted to start his new kingdom over there. It's interesting that that's actually the last place in Tanakh where Hebron is mentioned. It's like you have David Melech and then his son, and then that's it. It's never mentioned again. All the other kings in the next 400, 500 years of Jewish history, there's no mention of Hebron in the rest of Tanakh. What is interesting though is that Hebron is, besides being the name of a city, it's also the name of a person. It's a personal name. There's Levi, the son of Yaakov in Levi, so he had 3 sons, Gershon, Nahas, and Merari. So Moshe Rabbeinu was a descendant of Kahas. Kahas had a bunch of sons as well. Kahas had Amram, Yitzhar, Hebron, and Uziel. Amram was the father of Moshe Rabbeinu, Yitzhar was the father of Korach, then he had his son Hebron, and his son Uziel. Uziel was the father of Mishal and El-Tzafon, who had sons who were prophets, Eldad and Medad. But Hebron, we don't really know much about him. But Hebron was one of the sons of Kehas, so it's a personal name besides being the name, a place name in Tanakh. If you're trying to ever do research on the city of Hebron, so when you type it into Google, don't type Hebron, Chevron, because then you'll get a lot about the Chevron gas station. So you have to be careful. You write Hebron, Hebron, the English name Hebron, then you can find about the city. If you write Chevron, you're going to find more about gas than about the city.
I did it the other day, and it said Hebron, Palestine.
Hebron Palace. No, it's in Area A, so it's under the administration of the Palestinian Authority. It's so that's there's the way it works is that there's actually a settlement in the city of Hebron, which is considered a PA city and has actually an Arab mayor and everything. So there is a small Jewish enclave of about, according to Wikipedia, 500 people, 500 Jews that live in the city of Hebron, and then there's sort of on the outskirts of Hebron, it's a separate community. It's called Kiryat Arba. So we said that Kiryat Arba in Tanakh, in the Bible, Kiryat Arba is a synonym for Hebron, but in contemporary times there's Hebron, the city, and then there's like outside of Hebron, there's like a suburb called Kiryat Arba, which is a huge settlement with like 7,000 people or something, a Jewish settlement with like 7,000 people. So it's a bigger thing. One of the points we said, going back to the verse in Numbers 13:22, so we said that we said that when they went to Hebron, there were Achiman, Shesha, and Talmai, the sons of the giant, and then we mentioned this like random factoid. The Hebron Sheva Shanim Nivnos Elefnei Tzayin Mitzrayim. Hebron was built 7 years before Tzayin Mitzrayim. So Tzayin Mitzrayim is actually it's the city of Tanis in Egypt. I used to think that it was Tunis, like Tunisia, but it's a mistake. It's also in North Africa, but it's an ancient Egyptian city called Tanis, Tanis. Archaeologists know exactly where it is and can tell you all kinds of things about it. So the Torah tells us this fact that Hebron was built 7 years before the city Tanis in Egypt was built. And the Medrash in Parshas Achremes, in Teres Kainim in Parshas Achremes, asks a very interesting question. You see, Hebron was, let's say, conquered. In the beginning, it was one of the first cities that was. It seems to be that it was one of the first cities that was conquered after the Jews came into the Holy Land. So that would mean that, let's say, after the Exodus, till the Jews came into the Holy Land, it was 40 years, right? So there's 40 years from the Exodus till Hebron was conquered, and then we have these 7 years that Hebron predated the founding of the city Tzayin Mitzrayim. So the Medrash asks an interesting question. It says that in Parshas Achremes it says, "K'maaseh Eretz Mitzrayim lo yisaseh, u'maaseh Eretz Canaan asher ani mevi eschem shava lo yisasu." When the Torah introduces to us the topic of the forbidden sexual relations, so it says, don't do like the deeds of the people of the land of Egypt and like the deeds of the land of Canaan. So in that, the Torah equates what the sins or the depraved things that the people in Canaan and the people of Egypt were doing. They're both doing equally depraved things in this way. And so you would assume that if they're both doing equally depraved things, that they would both be deserving of the same sort of punishment. Yet what happens ultimately is that Egypt is more or less devastated by the Exodus, In the time of there's the 10 plagues, and then there's the splitting of the sea, which killed out the Egyptian army. Right? That's when Egypt was devastated and punished for their sins. Yet, the city of Hebron, let's say, the city of Hebron was only punished 40 years later. It was only conquered 40 years. The Canaanite city of Hebron was conquered 40 years later when the Jews came into the Holy Land. So the Medrash says, why is it that the city of Hebron merited to last 47 years longer than the city of Tzayan Mitzrayim, of Tanis in Egypt? Why did it last 47 years longer? 40 years from the Exodus until from the Exodus until the Jews conquered Hebron, and another 7 years because Hebron predated the establishment of Tzayin Mitzrayim by 7 years. So the Medrash asks, why was Hebron so special that it got an extra 47 years that Egypt didn't get that 47 years? So the Medrash answer is a very interesting answer. We said before that Avram Avinu went to Hebron to purchase a burial place from this man named Ephron the Hittite, Ephron the Chiti. And so when he went there, Ephron the Chiti was very welcoming of Avram Avinu. He wanted Avram Avinu to buy a piece of land from him. And in fact, he actually said some very nice things about Avram Avinu. When Avram Avinu came to him, he said, Nisi Elikim atah b'seichenu. You are the Prince of God amongst us. B'mivchar kvarenu kvares v'sacha. With the choicest of burial places, you shall bury your dead. So Ephron Hachiti, he said these nice things about Avram Avinu, and he recognized Avram Avinu's special role as the Nisi Elikim, as the Prince of Hashem, and in that merit, and Ephron Hachiti was the mayor of Hebron at that time. Now we have an Arab mayor, but then they had a Hittite mayor, right? So Ephron Hachiti recognized a certain Avram Avinu and how special Avram Avinu was, and how connected he was to Hashem, and in that merit, the city of Hebron got to last an extra 47 years more so than the city of Egypt lasted. So it's a powerful idea that the Medrash speaks out over here. Or we'll end off with this question. We'll have a few different answers to this. We said before that the city of Hebron is synonymous with Kiryat Arba. Another name for Hebron is Kiryat Arba. So the question is, what does the name Kiryat Arba mean? And what does it have to do with the city of Hebron? So there is the famous Rashi. Rashi says, why is it called Kiryat Arba? Because there were 4 couples that were buried in the city of Hebron. Kiryat means city or town. Arba means 4. So Kiryat Arba means the town of the 4. So what does Rashi say? It means the 4 couples. Who are the 4 couples? So we have Adam and Chava, Avraham and Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka, Yaakov and Esau's head, and Leah. Right? Those are the 4 couples. Now the truth is that this Rashi is actually a synthesis of 2 opinions in the Medrash. One opinion in the Medrash says that why is it called Kiryat Arba? Because of the 4 forefathers who were buried in the city of Hebron. Adam, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov.
At the point that it's called Kiryat, at what point is it called Kiryat Arba?
Well, 1 second. You're asking a beautiful question.
We're dead yet.
Yeah, you got a lollipop for that.
Thank you very much. Go ahead. Strawberry?
That's a beautiful question. We'll get to that in a second. Another opinion in the Medrash says, why is it called Kiryat Arba? Because of the 4 mothers who were Chava, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. No, not Rachel. Why did I say Rachel? Chava, Sarah, Rivka, Leah. I was saying it too fast. Right? Rachel's buried in Bethlehem. So it's the 4. So one opinion in the Medrash says 4 fathers. One opinion says 4 mothers. And Rashi makes a synthesis. He says 4 couples. Right? People like to repeat. And people say, "Oh, Rashi is always just quoting midrashim. He doesn't say anything original." The truth is, it's not true. If you look very carefully at the sources that Rashi is quoting, and you compare it to what Rashi is saying, Rashi a lot of the times is saying a nuanced idea that he's not just quoting. He's saying something different. He'll say a medrash, not exactly on the same pasuk that the medrash says it on. Not exact. He doesn't say exactly in the same way. Rashi, he's very original. You just have to know exactly how to judge it.
I wonder if that was very controversial in his time.
What?
In other words,
To change it a little bit.
Yeah, the Gedolim looked at this. Who is this guy? The Medrash doesn't say that. Who comes along and says, "Well, I'm going to take liberties with the Medrash." Excuse me, you don't predate the Medrash.
That's an interesting thing. We don't. I don't think we ever find that Rashi was ever controversial. Like Rambam was controversial, Ramchal was
You see,
controversial.
Ramban frequently does say that, Rashi made a tower.
Yeah, okay. The Ramban has a different way of looking at things. Yeah. So Rabbi Millman asked a very
Not Rabbi.
Doctor, Mister
Just
Reuven Millman.
That's him.
Reuven Millman asked a very interesting question. He said, how could you say that the city is called Kiryat Arba, the city of the four, because of the four couples that were buried there? We mentioned before that when did we say it's called Kiryat Arba? When Sarah died. It says Batama Sarah Kiryat Arba hi Hebron. In the context of the death of Sarah, it's called Kiryat Arba. Well, when Sarah died, there weren't four couples buried there yet. So how could you say that that's why it's called Kiryat Arba? Right? So it could be that this is one of the reasons why I have 6 explanations why it's called Kiryat Arba. And it could be this is one of the reasons why some of the commentaries reject this explanation and say one of the other explanations. It could be, but the way that the Mefarshim answer it, they give 2 answers. One answer is you could say that the Torah was speaking based on the future. Meaning, yes, at the time that Sarah died, it wasn't called Kiryat Arba, but the Torah is telling you that it's going to be called Kiryat Arba. Like you could say that the Torah is sort of doing it prophetically. Or you could say that by the time of Moshe Rabbeinu it was called Kiryat Arba. And when Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the Torah, so he wrote it based on the facts that were available in his time. And in his time, the 4 couples were already buried there. So you can say it like that. Another opinion in the Medrash is why is it called Kiryat Arba? Because there were 4 tzaddikim who lived in the city in the time of Avram Avinu. So this is this is answering your question. This is in the time of Avram Avinu, when Sarah died, when the Torah first uses the term Kiryat Arba. So there were 4 righteous people that lived there. It's Avram Avinu and his 3 colleagues, Aner, Eshkol, and Mamre. We mentioned Mamre a few minutes ago. Aner, Eshkol, and Mamre, Haim Bale Bris Avram. They were Avram's Bale Bris. It's something you can't translate into English. His covenant men, his fellows, his I don't know, his posse. I don't know how do you say it in English. They were his friends. The Medrash says that he's the one that he consulted with these 3 people about exactly how to do his bris milah, whether he should do, how he should do it out in the open, should he do it in private, what would be dangerous, what would be the maximum effect on the masses. So they were Avram Avinu's friends and Avram Avinu's colleagues, Oner, Eshkol, and Mamre. So because of that, you have 4 righteous people that lived in the city. So it's called the city of 4 because of those 4 righteous people. Another explanation is, this is the 3rd explanation, or the 5th, depending on how you count it. Why is it called the city of 4? Because there were 4 giants. Right? There was Achiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, the 4 giants. Yilidei Ha'anak. They were the sons of the giant, which, according to some commentaries, okay, whatever. But there was Achiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, and their father. So that's 4 people. The Maral in Gur Aryeh has a whole explanation why he prefers this explanation more than the 4 couples explanation, because he says that if it was, no, I'm sorry, yeah, okay, whatever. It gets a little bit technical, but we'll skip that part. Another explanation the Medrash says why is it called the city of 4. This is an interesting idea. That one of the highlights, or one of the major points in Avram Avinu's life was when he intervened in the famous war between the 4 kings and the 5 kings. There were 5 kings in the land of Canaan, in the Dead Sea, in the Jordan River Valley area. There were the kings of Sodom, Amora, Admah, Tzvaim, and Sayar. Those were 5 kings in the land of Canaan, and they were shipped by 4 Mesopotamian kings from back in Iraq or whatever, that area. The king of Babylon, the king of Shinar, the king of Elasar, whatever. I don't remember all of them offhand, but there were the 4 Mesopotamian kings. And so they subjugated these 5 kings, and then the 5 kings rebelled, and then the 4 kings came and started fighting. That these 4 kings were extremely powerful kings. They were in Mesopotamia, and their sphere of influence reached the land of Canaan. So they were obviously very strong, powerful kings. And Avram Avinu intervened on behalf of the 5 kings to help save them from the 4 kings. So the Medrash says that why is it called Kiryat Arba, the city of 4? Because from that city, Avram Avinu went out to fight the 4 kings. And the Medrash uses actually an interesting word. It's a Greek word, which I think we can understand what it means. It uses the word, it doesn't say kings, it doesn't say 4 kings, it says the 4 cosmocrats. A cosmocrat, it's an English word as well. A cosmocrat is a person who rules the world, a superpower, a world power. Cosmos, like the whole world, it's the cosmocrat. So Avraham had to fight the 4 cosmocrats from Kiryat Arba. So that was his base, so that's why it's called Kiryat Arba, the city of the 4. Another explanation, this is the Ibn Ezra, the Radak, the Rashbam, they all say that Kiryat Arba is, why is it called Kiryat Arba? They take like this is a simple explanation. Why is it called Kiryat Arba? Because it was named after a man whose name was Arba. A guy named Arba. Rabbi Avram ben Arambam, who's known as one of the very literal commentators, he doesn't try to say a lot of exegetical things. I once saw a T-shirt that said "Jews for exegesis."
I don't know what exegesis means.
Exegesis is like medrash. So Rabbi Avram ben Arambam writes that there was a guy, the first king, his name, or the guy who built the city, the guy who founded the city, or the first king, his name must have been Arba, and the city is named after this guy because he was the first king, or because he was the guy who built the city, so that's why it's called Arba. I have a somewhat technical objection to this understanding. They take the word Arba to mean a personal name. It's a personal noun. It's a name, right? Kiryat Arba means the city of Arba. They don't understand that it means 4. The problem is that in one of the places where the city is mentioned, and I didn't write down where it is, but it says, oh, I know where it is. When Yitzchak Avinu dies, so it says, Vayava Yaakov el Yitzchak Aviv. This is in Genesis 35:27. Vayava Yaakov el Yitzchak Aviv. Yaakov came to his father Yitzchak. Mamrei Kiryas Arba, to the place of Mamrei Kiryas Arba. He Hebron asher garsham Avram Yitzchak. That is the city of Hebron where Avram and Yitzchak lived. And then it says afterwards that Yitzchak died and he was buried there. Right. So it says Kiryas Arba, the city of the 4. Now, grammatically, the way it works in Hebrew, what?
If I say Ha-Adam,
You don't.
Ha is saying the name.
No, one second. The way it works grammatically in Hebrew is you can't have a prefix or a suffix like this on a person's name. You can put a proper name into construct form, like you could say, you have the city Yerushalayim, and a person who's from Yerushalayim, he's a Yerushalmi. That's a construct form. Fine, you could have that. You could have that. You could have it as an adjective. Not construct. You could turn it into an adjective. He is a Yerushalmite person, Yerushalmi, right? But you can't take a proper name and give it a definite article. You don't say, "I went to the Ruvain." See, in English we say the Rambam. But in Hebrew, it's not grammatic. You don't say the Shimon, the Avram. You don't talk like that. That's not how you say. You never in Tanakh. You don't say the Avram. You don't say the first name.
What if it's a relatively common name, Arba?
Yeah.
And there was like one famous guy named Arba.
Fine, but
Arba.
True, fine, but grammatically you don't say the Arba. You don't say.
If you wanted to point out that he was the big cheese, the Arba.
Yeah, you don't say it like that in Hebrew. It just grammatically it doesn't work out like that. It's like if you want to say like his Ruvain, right? You don't say Ruvainoi. It doesn't. There's no such thing. You can't have a possessive on a person. You can't have if you have 2 people named Ruvain, so you don't say, oh, hine haruvainim, these are the Ruvains. You can't make them plural either. It's a person is a personal name. You can't modify it in that way. So Kiryas Arba, the fact that there's a hey in the beginning of the word Arba suggests that the word Arba is a common noun. It's not a proper noun. So it would suggest that it means the 4th, the city of the 4th. It doesn't mean a name Arba. And then I'll just end off with the last idea. This is Rabbeinu Bechaye in his Pirush and Chumash, and also Rabbeinu Yehuda ibn Chalava, who is cousins with Rabbeinu Bechaye. Rabbeinu Bechaye in Chumash is known as Rabbeinu Bechaye ibn Chalava. not to be confused with the one who wrote Chayvas Salvavas, who's Rabbeinu Bechaya ibn Pakuda. There's two Rabbeinu Bechaya. So Rabbi Yehuda ibn Chalava and Rabbeinu Bechaya ibn Chalava, they write that why is it called Kiryat Arba? Because it's the city of the fourth. The fourth what? The fourth son of Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu had 12 sons. Going through his sons, Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. Yehuda is the fourth son of Yaakov Avinu, and the city of Hebron lies within of Yehuda, and that's why it's called Kiryat Arba, because it's the city of the fourth tribe.
You have the same problem though.
That's also problematic because
Yehuda was
that for sure. That you would have to say that it's prophetically or something like you can't say the answer that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote it. You have to say prophetically. But the other question is then why is it Kiryat Arba? It should be Kiryat Haravi'i. Right? There's an ordinal number and a what's it called? An ordinal number is numbers that are in order. And then there's the nominal number, the name of the number. Right? Ordinal is first, second, third, and nominal is 1, 2, 3. So here it says Kiryat Arba. That's the nominal form of the number 4. It should really be the ordinal form, which would be the Kiryat Haravi'is.
It's a pretty obvious
Yeah.
question.
How
could they avoid that?
it's a Jewish or something. I don't know. Okay, fine. Those are my thoughts on the city of Hebron. Thank you very much.